So we have a couple of meetings tonight and next week to look a little bit at non-duality, which is very central for the practice of Tantra and Mahamudra and Dzogchen. So generally speaking, the Buddhist teachings are said to begin with the Four Noble Truths, in which in the first truth there is suffering, some quality that impacts someone. So that's a dualistic situation. Something is happening to me, it's not pleasant, I don't like it. And the second of the truths is that there is an origin, that this is not a permanent situation. It arises due to causes, due to craving and grasping and reification. And because it has an origin, it has a sensation, a cessation. And in order to bring about the cessation, we have the Eightfold Path. So this sets out this very basic Buddhist proposition that all compounded things are impermanent. Everything which has a beginning has an end. So the reason we stress the origin is ignorance or unawareness or mental obscuration arises contingent on circumstances. It has no inherent truth or validity in itself. It's a delusion. And yet, as long as it functions, it takes us over and we act according to it. So therefore, the notion of origins is very important. More generally, looking from the Nyingma Kagyu point of view, we have the sense that there is a ground to everything. This ground or source or basis is ungraspable. And from it, as Samantabhadra says, all the possible appearances of samsara and nirvana have the same source, yet two paths and two results arise from this, as the magical display of awareness and unawareness. So this is the key thing, that the arising of limitation and the arising of freedom are like something magical. And the reason for this is we might want ignorance to be impermanent and awareness to be permanent. But as soon as you make the claim that something is permanent, it's very easy to start building something on top of it. And then awareness becomes a kind of soul-like quality. Both arise and are without any substance. Nothing is born. Nothing comes into true separate existence. From the very beginning, everything is non-dual with the ground or inseparable from the ground, which is why in our practice, the main thing is to awaken to the ground, which is our own mind itself. So what is this ground? It's generally described as having 5 particular qualities. And we have to remember that this ground is neither in samsara nor nirvana. It's neither good nor bad. It's completely neutral. It's the space of potential. Potentials arise, and these are able to carry attributes of positive, negative, useful, not useful, and so on. So primordial Buddha Samantabhadra describes these 5 qualities of the ground as, firstly, it is uncompounded. Now, when we compound something, we take things and put them together, like children making some castle out of little pieces of colored wood, and they put them together, they put them into a particular shape. They're composing them together. There, you can take these wooden pieces apart very easily. if you're baking and you make some dough and you mix it and you add ingredients to it to make a cake, then once you bake it, you can't unmake the cake. The cake is kind of there. And this is the way we tend to experience compounded things. We think, oh, it's so transformed. How would we get back out of this? But the ground itself is not compounded, because you need to have diverse ingredients to have the ground. And there are no diverse ingredients to the ground. And this links to the second quality, which is called self-arising or self-manifesting, Rangjung. It is here, just here. It's always just there. Nobody has made it. There's no God behind it. It hasn't any causal basis anywhere. It is outside of time, outside of location. It's neither inside nor outside. It just is, and yet it isn't anything. The third quality is infinite extension or infinite depth, Klongyang. It means if you try to find this ground, you pass right through everything. You never come to a boundary. We see this hellish war now in Ukraine because there is a disrespect from Russia of the boundaries of the Ukraine, and so they send their army in. Most of us have a lock on our door because we don't want robbers to come in and take our possessions. Our world exists of boundaries. You can come through here or you can't come through here. But Klongyang means no boundary at all, no limitation. Well, we will get very confused because we like to know where things are. But the ground of ourselves has no reliance on maps or territories with shapes. There is no topology. It's just open. And the fourth quality, which I think you see will fit, is it is inexpressible, because none of the factors that we use in order to establish the existence of something, size, shape, where it came from, who manufactured it, all of these ways of analyzing phenomena to think whether they belong in our country or they're an import and so on, none of that applies. There is nothing to say about the source. It's just there or here. Moreover, the fifth quality is that it is free of even the names of samsara and nirvana. You cannot categorize it. You cannot say it is liberation and therefore good, or it's a source of limitation and therefore bad. It is ungraspable. So if we go back to the second noble truth, the origin of suffering is grasping at something. You can take hold of it. You can apprehend it. Now you've got something. That needs two things, well, three things, these three wheels, as they're called: the self, the subject, something which is graspable, and the action of grasping. The ground is free of that completely. So this is the ground of duality, which is itself free of all duality. It's just the ground of it. But next we can think about the origin of duality, because what I want to do is to map out for you how duality arises, so that you can start to really appreciate it is completely without any permanent individual self. It is an emergent appearance come experience. From one side, it looks like object, so we say appearance. From the other side, it looks like subject, so we say experience. But there is no boundary or division between the two. So in the traditional explanation, the first level of ignorance is the ignorance of the soul existent. It's a dagni, the sense of there being something which is not anything. And this something doesn't arise as a postulation at first. Nobody's presenting something. This is just the openness of the ungraspable source, and within it, there's a sudden darkness. Although the source has neither light nor dark, its infinite extension, its ungraspability is non-problematic because it's just open. But when there is unawareness of that ground, not as something that I came from, but as the immediacy of here, when that vanishes from us, there is oblivion, like a sudden descending dark night, or like being hit on the back of the head or falling down the stairs. And there's no recollection at all, lost. And then there's a kind of flickering, oh, here, where, how? Long before language, but just a kind of tremulous vibration. Something, but no one who knows what that something is. Because in the openness of the mind itself, everything is self-arising and self-liberating, like the waves arising in the ocean, arising and liberating. They are the ocean. The wave is not separate from the ocean. But when this vibration arises, it appears as other than the ground because there is unawareness, non-recognition of the ground. So this is the beginning of stuff, a kind of thickening, accretion, a layering on of various very subtle little experiences, like very fine wispy clouds in the sky that just gather on a summer's day and gradually accumulate to build up a cumulus, an accumulating cloud. This leads into the second level or moment of unawareness, which is called the co-emergent unawareness. It means that two factors are born together. The whole field is born together, but in particular, two factors. That is to say, the knower and the known, the subject and the object, the self and the other. Because if there is something experienced, there has to be an experiencer. What is this? It is the mind. Nothing has been born. Nothing has been born. Nothing has come into discrete, separate existence. But there is experience. But because the ground of experience is not understood, because the source is not seen, it seems to be something. And so there is a retraction, a turning away from it, a pulling in. And the more there is a pulling in, it increases the sense of me, not me, not me, no. And then the more separated the me is, the more empty this me feels. I need some content. And so there is grasping out to get something from the other to make it me. Just as we eat food, we take the items of the world for their vitamins and proteins and so on, and we eat them and we incorporate them into our body. Some we absorb and some we send back. So desire as a taking and aversion as a pushing away, this is the very structure of the body. But before we even get to embodiment, this is just like an energy pulsation. Now, in the Tibetan it says Hlenchit Chepa, born together, arising together. This is like two Siamese twins, two children who are joined. They are not two because they have separate capacity, but they're also not one. They are non-dual, but this is not recognized. So subject and object arise together They are born together, except they're not born. They haven't manifested separate from the source. They are the display of the source, just as a rainbow arises in the sky as the play of factors in the sky. You can't take a rainbow out of the sky. You can't take a reflection out of the mirror. So these two pulsing aspects of the vitality of the mind, which is the quality of awareness dulled as unawareness. The potential for awareness is now being refracted through a complex prism, which leads into this splitting into the seemingly separate subject and object. But they have the same ground, the same ground. They have the same basis. They are not inherently separate. They are not inherently different, and yet they appear to be different. Now, if you don't see the ground, the source, and unawareness means unaware of this ground, then what's this? It's stuff. It's just stuff. There's a lot of, all this stuff is coming at us. It is other than self. Some is attractive, some is not. So then we have the third level, the unawareness of the source or the ground, which manifests as the identification of the separate entities which seem to compose the world. So there's houses, there's trees, there's mountains, there's ourselves, we have ears, we have a nose, we have different bits to the world, bits to me. This is where language starts to function, because language gives a kind of validation to the imputed, the imagined, the projected separate existence of these phenomena. So if you were studying anatomy in a medical school, you know, and looking at the dead body, you see all the different parts. I mean, a body is everything functioning together. That's what a healthy body does. It's a communicative system. But when you see the dead body and you can name all the parts and then you pass your anatomy exam, it is as if the body is composed of bits. But the bits need to be linked together to function. So the naming operates as a further diversifier and separator of phenomena. And the more from the subject side, I am able to name what is there on the outside, not just in a purely descriptive way, but in an affect enriched way. That is to say, when I see something, there is a feeling tone of liking or disliking. And that then leads to more interest to what I like than what I don't like, unless what I don't like seems a bit dangerous, and then it's getting a lot of my attention. So there you've got the Theravadan general view of the 5 skandhas. The first is form, and form means shape and color. And towards that you have feeling tone arising, liking, not liking, or neutral. And then on the basis of that, you have the hooking of selective attention, which creates a figure ground differentiation. And so the factors in the world are separated off as significant or insignificant. The whole field is arising together. There is no inherent separation or differentiation, and yet it is as if by the movement of this mental energy, the energy of the mind, the naturally arising energy of the mind, the illusion of separate entities is arising, with a parallel arising of differentiation in what I take to be myself. Because when we start to observe ourselves, we become aware that we are subject to moods, or perhaps rather we are moods. Sometimes we're happy, sometimes sad, sometimes anxious, sometimes confused. And as these colorations, these moods suffuse us, as they permeate us, so our attention to the environment is altered. If you're happy and relaxed, you can want to be with other people, you can laugh and joke. But if you're feeling anxious and upset about something, you might think, no, I don't want to see anyone. I need to gather myself together. So this means that I'm actually starting to manifest a kind of portfolio or spectrum of self aspects. And I can be aware that they are manifesting. But of course, what I start to see is I'm not in charge of this. I'm not making myself happy. I find that I'm happy, or someone says something to me and I feel a little bit included and warmed, and so I feel happy. It is arising dependent on circumstances. So what constitutes me is not inherent and defined as internal to me, but is an outcome of the quality of the interaction that I'm having with the environment. So when we actually look, we see self and other are always connected. They're always interactive. We are never alone. Even for these yogis in Tibet who lived alone in a cave for a very long time, they had the cave. They had the sound of the birds crying. They would see the deer on the hill. They would be colder in the winter, warmer in the summer. They had memories. They had thoughts for the future. They were in an interactive matrix. Certain things would evoke memories. They arise, they pass. So we are moving in a world which is moving, and yet, because of this basic splitting, this basic duality of self and other, I'm carrying the misleading notion, I exist, I am someone, I am me, let me tell you about me, as if I could define myself, which is impossible, because there's always something more to say. We are expressive, we are linking out, we are coming into being in the moment. That is to say, self and other tumble together and are mutually kind of manifesting each other. You see the world differently according to how you experience yourself in the moment. And the world you encounter also shifts your mood. So this is a very complex interactive system which is not centered in either polarity of self or other. However, this is mainly invisible to us because we want to settle ourselves in, this is me. So moment by moment, I'm just me. If I was to track it over time, I would see many different aspects of myself being revealed. But because in each moment, this is me, I'm just this, I appear to myself to somehow be entire, complete. And this leads into the fourth aspect of unawareness of the source, which is called the unawareness, which is the dullness of having no understanding of karma. So when I think, well, I'm just me, this is how I am, it is as if I exist outside time. I know I have a history, I have parents, I have all my life experience, and these will have had some causal, conditional influences in the trajectory of how I've been in life. But the basic feeling tone is, I'm just me. This is me. So from that positioning, that encapsulation into the seeming entire presence of myself in this moment, this cut-offedness of the self, as if the root has been cut and I'm just floating here. I'm self-defining, self-grounded. This is the basis for karma. I exist and the world exists as something out there. Other people are not me. That's the first stage of karmic accumulation. The second stage is an intention arises. I see something other than me that I like, and so I go towards it. Or I see something I don't like, and I want to move away from it. So the intention is locating myself with greater or lesser proximity to the object. The third factor in karma is to carry out the action of bringing my attention, my intention into manifestation in the world. So if I want to help someone, I might offer to go to the shops for them, to buy something for them. I go to the shops, I make the purchase, I carry the bag back, I give it to them. The deed is done. Then we come to the fourth stage, which is the conclusion, where I can feel satisfied that I did it. I'm happy, yeah, that was good. Or I feel not so happy. So I've gone to the shops for this person, I've helped them, and they didn't thank me. Oh, why did I bother? What was that for? So this is because we are complicated people. We want to be generous, but we also want to be rewarded and have people think well of us. So this internal conflict of self-positionings or self-states operating in the repertoire of myself means that I'm often divided against myself in how I perform towards other people. I can have regrets that I've done too much, or I didn't do it quite the right way, or they didn't thank me the right way. But when these four factors lock on, then I, as the agent, the doer, and the formation of my intention, which is not contradicted, and its enactment, and my agreement with the result, with the outcome, these four intensify and massage into our mind stream certain tendencies. This is how karma operates. In the Tibetan language, they say lejum dre, activity, which is a cause, having a result. And the result comes much later with the ripening of these tendencies. So we don't remember the things we've done in previous lives, but these tendencies come through us. If you see very small children, little babies, they have personality, they have tendencies. The Buddhist understanding of this is factors in their mind stream that manifest at a later time. This mind stream, Rangyu, Santana, is the flow of consciousness at its most subtle level, which offers a hospitality to the tendencies. So we have what's called the ground consciousness, the alaya vijnana, in which these tendencies that are accumulated kind of reside there as a potential. like in a great botanical garden. They'll have a seed bank. They'll have many, many containers in storage of the seeds of the various plants. And as required, they can activate the seeds by giving them moisture and access to the soil and light and so on. And the seeds start to sprout. So we are full of seeds, or rather our mind stream is full of seeds which are activated by circumstances. So the unpredictable environment factors and the internal potential factors start to dance and move together, and our poor little ego self is there in the middle, not quite understanding, why is this happening to me? Oh, why is my life like this? But from the Dharma point of view, because the structure of this world is ethical, because it is grounded in the nature of the mind, and the mind is not fundamentally against itself, because everything has the same source. When you act with prejudice for one thing and against another thing, this tension or torque or twist potentiates or energizes these tendencies, and so they become embedded, and so they manifest. Our lives are not ours. We are not the owners of our body. At any moment, sicknesses can start to manifest for us. We're not the owners of our environment, because many factors are operating, including climate change, the economic situation. Now inflation is arising in most Western countries. There are going to be many, many immigrants coming because of this crisis in the Ukraine, which will impact the national balance sheet, the amount of money the government can hold in its central bank, and so on. Suddenly arising factors shake everything and move it around very, very quickly. So this kind of movement of energy is very important, because although I feel I am me, living my life on my terms, I want to have autonomy, self-directedness, I want to fulfill my own private aims and ambitions, and it may seem that a modern democratic structure will support me in doing this, and we have all kinds of United Nations charters and statements about the rights of the individual and so on. This is nonsense. What we see is Russia is going into the Ukraine and murdering endless numbers of people, and we sit like castrated dummies watching and crying. It's happening. We're not doing this. These are events arising due to complex notions of desires, hatred, fabricated national myths, narcissistic wounds in the great president. There are many, many factors operating there. This world is complex beyond the interpretive power of the individual ego intellect. So there is no separate self on this level. This is non-duality, the interconnectivity of everything, but it is denied because I want to live inside my fantasy that I am a discrete, separate individual and I can have my life on my terms. And this, from the Buddhist point of view, is a complete delusion, and it's an attack on society. And one of these outcomes from this positioning is we're not all that sure how to collaborate together. Because in Europe, there are many historical fault lines of conflict, wars in the past. As the Buddha said, friends become enemies, enemies become friends, but nonetheless, there are trace elements that say, oh, I'm not so sure about these people. Ooh, what have they done? And so the idea that we can really work together in an integrated way starts to break down, as we saw with this idiocy of Brexit. Because collaboration means you have to find common ground. The most basic common ground is the ground which the Dzogchen teachings point to. This is the ground of everything. But when we don't have any access to that, we have fabricated artificial grounds. So we can say the free Western countries, which are not like the communist countries, or the countries that have a good standard of living. We're not like the third countries. We have so many ways of slicing everything up to say the similar, dissimilar, and so on. So this is the force field that we find ourselves in as these karmic tendencies and functions keep moving and pulsating. There's a lot of evidence with climate change that phenomena operate together to create complex patterns, that we have unintended results to our actions. We see this in the pollution of the seas, the thinning of the atmosphere in various places, and so on. We think we've analyzed the factors in the ecology, and so now I understand what's going on. But then suddenly something else comes, like the spontaneous fires that were breaking out in the Russian tundra, all the way through to Siberia, the fires that were occurring in Canada. Nobody set these things burning. It was due to causes and conditions, the temperature, the wind, summer storms with lightning and so on, and suddenly you have a big blaze coming. We are not in charge. So this is where ordinary Western thought and Dharma go very, very differently. In Western thought, we always think, well, let's try harder, let's make a plan, let's work out how we can control things, how can we manage the situation. From the Dharma point of view, they say, look, you're not in charge. You have a false notion of your own importance. And this is why you have a lot of difficulties and troubles. So that's a very brief account of how duality arises in the world. And duality is a kind of mist obscuring the open space of non-duality. Non-duality is intrinsic because whatever occurs has not separated from its own ground. It's like a reflection in a mirror. You can't take the reflection out of the mirror, and you can't take appearance out of the open ground, because as with these 5 qualities that Samantabhadra described, it is infinite and uncompounded. It doesn't have a top or a bottom or a side. It doesn't stand in comparison to anything else. But the benefit for us in encountering the Dharma is that we get an explanation of not only how our sense of being an isolate, an individual entity, an existent has come into being, but we also get a way of thinking about what to do. We get the beginning of a path. And the path begins with a disruption of the assumption of the self as an existent. As long as we remain wedded to the sense, I am an autonomous agent, I act out of my own volition, my own intention, this will blind us to our actual situation. So in the Dharma, we start, certainly in the Tibetan tradition, we start with the 4 thoughts that turn the mind from samsara. They are designed to wake us up, to give us an alternative view. And so you might think these are very preliminary kind of considerations, but as with everything in Dharma, if we really look, we find it is very, very profound. So we have the 8 factors of being born in a reasonably healthy environment, where there are possibilities, and we have 10 opportunities. And the first is to obtain a functioning human body, to be born in a central country where Dharma has spread, that we have all our 5 sense organs. So the first 5 are concerned with how I am. And then the second 5 are concerned with something else, that a really pure and perfect Buddha has arrived in this world, that Buddha has preached the Dharma, that the Dharma teaching still remains, that there is a Sangha practicing, and that the Dharma is taught by compassionate beings. That is to say, self and other have to meet together for the Dharma to proceed. If the Buddha hadn't taught, we wouldn't know about the structure of samsara, and we wouldn't know that there is any way out of it. We have the capacity to hear about Dharma, to become interested, to open to Dharma, and to start to study and practice. And that is operating together with the Dharma which is available through the historical Buddha and through all the lineage people who have maintained this and brought it into the present moment. That is to say, that which is not me, the Dharma, teaching at least, and me come together. It is the collaboration of subject and object which is the basis of the path. And we see that in terms of refuge. I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. That is to say, I don't want to live in this little island of myself anymore. I'm throwing these ropes out, saying, Buddha, please catch the rope, pull me in. Don't let me drift off in this ocean of samsara. Save me. Save me by bringing me close to you. We say, Karmapa kieno. Karmapa, think of me, remember me, keep me in your heart. Don't forget me. It is a terrible thing to be forgotten. We know that many political prisoners are locked up in very harsh conditions. They are locked in cells without daylight. They have very bad food. They are tortured. To be in a place like that and have the thought, nobody knows, because very often people are arrested in the middle of the night, they put a bag over their head, carry them away, nobody knows who's taking them, some kind of militia. That is a hellish fate. Does nobody remember me? Not even one candle is burning for me. So when we want refuge, and we want refuge for everyone, if we're doing our prostrations, we imagine all our enemies in front of us, our friends behind us, father's lineage, mother lineage, all sentient beings, all going for refuge to the Buddha. What we're doing is we're practicing connectivity as an antidote to the disconnection, which is the basis of duality. This is at the heart of our practice. Then in these 4 thoughts, the second, impermanence and death, we become aware of how everything changes around us, how the factors of our world are unpredictable and unreliable, and also that we're going to die. This body was going to start fading, and then we will leave the body. We will go off on our journey, and we won't be able to take our books or our cars or our friends or our money. We go naked with only the wind of our karma blowing us from behind. So this is a very strong encouragement to bring yourself merged into Dharma understanding, so that when you die in a state of awareness, of self-arising rigpa. You just open into that state, because thoughts are unreliable. We have all had hundreds of thousands of thoughts in our lives, and emotions and sensations which have come and gone and come and gone. Only awareness, unborn awareness, is reliable. It's not a thing. It's not an appearance. It's not an experience. It's not something you can experience, because it is the ground of your presence. It is you. It is the truth of your being. So then we think about actions and their consequences, which we've touched on. And the fourth reflection is on how these tendencies arising in us bring us into the different realms, the 6 realms of samsara, the highest formless realms, the form realms, the sensory god realms, jealous gods, humans, animals, hungry ghosts, hell realms. Many different possibilities. When we read about these, we think, I don't want to go to a hell realm. That looks really, really horrible. I don't want to be there. How do people get there? Because their tendency arises in them at a particular moment, and there's a conjunction between the potential of the hell experience and their own patterning in that moment. So when you go shopping, particularly in the supermarket or in a clothes shop, you should always try to watch what other people are buying. It's very, very interesting. Why are they buying this? I don't eat that. Why do they want to eat that? They are not me. They have 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 nose. Oh, human being, hello. But look what they're eating. Look what they're wearing. Why are they doing that? When you start to see the specificity of tendencies, even in life, if you work in an office or a university or wherever, and you're working with colleagues, it's like, why are they like that? Why? You go in a meeting with people and think, oh, for God's sake, just shut up. What are you on about? You're crazy. Dumb. No. But blah, 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 blah. And they're probably thinking the same about us, because we're all in our little blinkered vision. And so at death, if you haven't opened up your blinkers, if you can't relax into the unborn mind of the bardo of the dharmata, the bardo of allowing phenomena to dissolve in their ground so that you have open emptiness, then what happens is you stay in the vibration of your self-construct until it dissolves, and then you identify with another vibration, and off you go. And then you're born as a bird or a fish or a dog or a cat or a hungry ghost, because we are not inherently human beings. Human beingness is a potential manifesting from the energy of the mind conditioned by the 5 poisons, our mental dullness, aversion, desire, pride and jealousy, the 5 elements, earth, water, fire, air, space, and so on. All these factors are moving all the time. Our life is just hanging on a thread. Dying is very easy. Car crashes in China, a plane fell out of the sky, fell straight down, straight down, bang, all these people dead. We don't know how long we're going to be in this form. It is my form temporarily, or rather, factors arise to manifest this situation. So our central question is always, who is the experiencer of my experience? when I feel myself to be this independent subject, what is the ground of this? What is the basis of this? And that's why death is so important, because after death there's another life and another life and another life. So it's form and then dissolving and then form and dissolving, just like the waves in the ocean. So what is the ocean? We know a lot about waves. We know about people's personalities, how our parents were, what kind of school we went to. If we've traveled around, we can talk about different places and so on. We know a lot about stuff. We can describe experiences, things that happened. But what is the actual nature of the experiencer? I think I am the experiencer, but I also experience myself experiencing myself. So I can have an infinite regression of commentaries on myself as this, as this, as this. Who is the actual knower? What is this presence? This is, once we start to be a bit curious about this, we come into the deeper Dharma path. What is it to be here? So in that way, we're starting to dislodge ourselves from the complacency of imagining that we can know who we are as a separate person, which means duality. I am me because I'm not you. If I look at you, it's obvious I'm not you. If I try to catch myself to explain who I am, that's much more difficult. Because when I look at you, I see a particular shape. I make certain projections about you, certain assumptions. You don't really contradict them because I don't tell you what I think about you. And therefore I can feel, oh yeah, he is like that, she is like that. But with regard to ourselves, we are so slippery. Our mood shifts, our idea shifts. We never know what we're going to think or feel. We are emergent. And yet I am emergent, but I'm me. So the insistence on being this person who will live and maybe live forever. Maybe other people die, but maybe I won't because I'm me. This dull, stupid, condensed sense of self is also present simultaneously with the emergence of the particular patterning of ourself moment by moment. And if we could just tilt our sense of self, and instead of assuming and stating and making propositions about who I am, if we can just start to observe, then we see, oh, I am dynamic. Or rather, dynamic interaction manifests me. I am not the ground of who I seem to be, but rather how I am as interaction, or how this pattern, which I call I, me, myself, how this pattern moves with the patterns around it, generates moment by moment the precise sense of this is me, but not for long. This is me, but not for long. Shifting, changing, shifting, changing. Once we start to see that, then the apartness, the seeming inherent existence of myself, what makes me different from everyone else, is simply a pattern of energy arising and passing, self-arising and self-vanishing. For some reason, you wake in the morning, you feel a bit sad. After a while, you don't feel sad. The sadness was there, it was you, and then it's gone. Then something else comes, then something else comes, then something else comes. You, if you like, are a site or a theater stage on which these performers run on and do their turn, their little manifestations, and then they're gone. You are an empty stage, and you are also a full stage. but you're not full of yourself. The movement on the stage constitutes the sense of being someone somewhere. So generally, as we move up through the different yanas, we analyze these factors of composition. So at first we look at the 5 skandhas, or the 5 heaps. The first is form, as I said earlier, color and shape. So when you look around the room you're in, you see lots of things. But from the point of view of the 5 skandhas, what you see is color and shape. And shape is indicated by the contrast of color. You know that there are 2 books on the shelf, because one has a blue cover and one has a red cover. So the juxtaposition, the placing together of these colors and the contrast of the colors is interpreted by your mind as an indicator of 2 different things. That's a mental function. What you have in the perception is the arising of an experience of color and shape, which evokes this feeling tone, or the sense of positive, I like, negative, not so nice, I don't like, or neutral, just nothing much at all. This hooks our attention. So, as I indicated earlier, something pleasant tends to become figural. It tends to manifest for us as more important, and the things which are not so important, or not so important for us, recede into the background for us. So this is how we each have our own particular experience of the potential of the world. The potential reveals itself through how we interact with what is arising. And what is arising is not a thing. There are no things. Self is not a thing. Other is not a thing. These are movements of pattern formation. And the perception of that is to see a shape and have it as the shape of something. Its true nature is it's a pattern in the mind, like a reflection in the mirror. The reflection has a shape and a color, and you can see it as referring to something else, so that's an interpretation. In the same way, this third skandha is the identification as the pattern as indicative of something. It is referring to something. So there's always a referent function. There's somewhere out there, this is relating to that. So that could be 2 things. This is telling me about that. So I look at the thermometer and I think, oh, it's cold outside. Or I could see the idea of temperature and the perception of the thermometer as a conversation, as a movement. Nothing is established because the temperature will change. I can only say, at this moment, this is the temperature. Due to causes and conditions, it is like this. And causes and conditions will change, so it's only momentarily like this. There's nothing you can grasp there, because the temperature is dependent on whether the wind is blowing from the north or the east or the south. The direction of the wind changes, the temperature goes down or goes up. Dependent origination. So the fourth of the skandhas is composition, gathering, or in Tibetan it means really made by gathering. You gather things together and then they get compounded or pressed together, and it creates the seeming existence of something. Because we are investing the formation with a validity. And that's then what we're conscious of. We're conscious of our own mental constructions. So the mind as the knower, consciousness, and what is arising, experience as the known, are both within the mind. So for meditators, this is very, very important. Because we have our Western traditions of philosophy, people then say, well, are you saying that everything is just the mind? Do you think a nuclear weapon is the mind? Or do you think Mount Everest is the mind? Well, Mount Everest is what we call a name. In Tibetan, they don't call it Mount Everest, they call it something else. It's just a name. Mount Everest is a name. If you go to Mount Everest and you look at it, you see one potential aspect of Mount Everest. As you climb up Mount Everest, it changes how it looks. If you go to the left, it looks different. If you go to the right, it looks different. In the morning, it looks different. In the evening, it looks different. There is no Mount Everest. Mount Everest is a potential for experience. You just need to go in the park and look at a tree. The tree is not a thing. The tree has its roots in the ground. How the tree is will depend on the rainfall. If the wind has been blowing very strongly, branches can get broken off, as was the case recently in England. You walk around the tree, and moment by moment, step at a time, a new potential or aspect of the tree is revealed. The tree is an infinity of possibilities revealed not just according to how your body is located, but also how your eyes are functioning, also how your mood is, whether you're available in yourself to give attention to the tree or not. Then you see that with people. If you have children, these children are a potential. You will never ever know your children because there'll always be something like what they did in school. They're not going to tell you how they feel inside when they get hurt. Maybe they're embarrassed. They don't want to show you. Or what they show you is them showing off in some way, being a bit larger than life. People are ungraspable. Trees are ungraspable. Even motor cars are ungraspable because they are revelatory. So if you can really see this, what we live in is an aesthetic universe. So aesthetics is the sensitivity that we bring to the appreciation of the potential of the environment. We let the world speak to us and touch us in its beauty and its complexity and so on. The other aspect of that is, of course, anesthesia, which you want when you go into hospital for an operation. You want to be knocked out. Well, according to the Buddhist teachings, we're already fairly unconscious. Our senses are dulled because we operate under the anesthesia of our assumptions. We think we know who people are. We think we know who the politicians are. We think we know what the patterns of the future will be. And because we have our belief, we stop looking. Assumption is blindness. Because when you assume, you have the comforting delusion that the future will be the same as the past. But the future is open. We don't know what winds will suddenly be blowing. None of us have any idea what the consequences of the war in Ukraine will be. Economically, politically, it could get very, very much worse, or it could collapse. We don't know. There is no fixed future out there, and the past is an interpretation. Otherwise, there would be no university departments of history. Why would so many people have written books about particular events like the French Revolution? if it was a done deal, this is the French Revolution, this happened, and that happened, and that happened, just read one book and that's enough. Oh yeah, I know about that. But endlessly, every year, more and more books come out because the past is interpretation. Interpretation means mental activity. The whole world is the mind. The mind is chief. So consciousness is reviewing and turning around and playing with the compounded factors, which is the gathering together of the possibilities of thinking about the object. So object and subject are moving together as patterns of interpretation. This is the 5 skandhas. There are no fixed things out there because we are creatures who are concerned with experience. When we talk about an appearance, we are talking about our experience of the appearance. If you go to the cinema with a friend and you sit side by side watching what we might call the same movie, you have different experiences. The potential of the movie and the patterning of your thoughts, feelings, sensations will shift how that movie is revealed for you. If the cinema is very busy and you're stuck with your friend and 3/4 of the way through the movie, you really need to go and have a pee, go to the toilet, then that will very strongly influence your experience of the last part of the movie, because your attention will be drawn to the pressure in your bladder. That happens all the time. There is a disruption of our availability to receive the world. But if you can see that not as a problem, but as, oh, this is dependent co-origination. This is the factors of experience moving and arising together and creating this and creating this. Very often, we cannot see this clearly because we've entered into judgment. Oh God, I wish I'd gone to the toilet first. I knew I should have done, but I didn't. I wonder why. Oh, why do I always do that? All kind of thoughts can arise. All of these thoughts are just thoughts. The mind, as, if you like, subject side, and the mind as object side, the sensation arising in the body, are moving together. This is an interactive display. Nothing is established. It's an ongoing co-emergence of subject and object. When you see this, then you see, oh, even in this Theravadan teaching, non-duality is exactly on the point. The 5 skandhas are co-arising. They are not things, but they are patternings. So the initial teaching about the 5 skandhas was presented as a critique of the idea of the existence of persons, what we call pudgala in Sanskrit, meaning a functioning person. I am James, I am from Scotland, I exist, I'm a person. So these 5 skandhas are a way of saying, look, these are the constituents of your life. You don't have anything more than the patterning that arises from this interaction. You are the result, not the ground, not the cause. This is very, very radical. I emerge from the interaction of these factors. I don't make them happen. I am not outside this movement. I'm not some king observer snapping my fingers and making things happen. I emerge as part of the flow of interaction of complex causes and conditions. Linked with this is the development that came in the arising of the Mahayana tradition, where the attention shifts from the 5 skandhas to which were taken as being 5 irreducible constituents. The assumption of them being the basic ingredients of life was then critiqued by looking at them and seeing that, in fact, you don't find any essence to them. There are no atoms of feelings or thoughts or bricks or apples or oranges. Each atom, if you look at it in the traditional way, each atom stands in relation to other atoms. So if I'm an atom, there's an atom in front of me and an atom behind me. So I have a front-facing and a back-facing way. So I have a front and a back, so you can slice it down the middle and separate these two. So you get a reduction to the end absurd degree. Everything can be spliced because it's arising in location. You never get one atom all by itself floating in space disconnected. It is because of the placing together that you get the building of these complex patterns. But that very placing together shows the absence of an inherent self in the atom. And that's called the absence of inherent existence in phenomena. So there's nothing graspable out there, and there's no one graspable in here. Grasping is obscuration. We don't need to grasp because this is a dynamic interplay. The issue then is not about being solid and defended and hungry and greedy and pushing away, but rather of collaboration, taking your place in the world, releasing the overdeterminism of judgment, and catching the rhythm of the moment, pulsing as part of the world pulse. And in that way, the mood of collaboration dissolves the sense that there are things which collaborate. Rather, collaboration is the freedom from the need to manage patterning in order to make it acceptable to the ego. Because when you realize that your ego self is simply a pattern as well, then as a pattern among patterns, there is a complex pulsation, which, if it's related to the ground, becomes a force of linking and compassion. And if it's not linked to the ground, if it claims to be self-existing, it becomes troublesome and full of friction and difficulty. So this is where we have arrived at this time today. Next week, we will look a little bit more and look in particular at meditation practice in relation to Tantra and Dzogchen and Mahamudra, and how non-duality is the simple truth of everything. So I shall leave you now. I hope you have a good evening, and I hope this was of some interest to you. So last week we looked in some detail at the dawning of duality, how this state of ignorance or unawareness arises. And now we'll focus more on non-duality as the ground, the path, and the result. In the traditional Nyingma view, shared also by the Kajuba, the ground is primordially pure. Something becomes impure when something else, something different, contaminates it. So the original, unchanging, primordial purity of the ground is the absence of anything other. This doesn't mean that there is only one thing, nor does it mean that there are many different things, but the ground is beyond conceptual grasping. It is the infinity of our own mind, which we will look at as we progress. Because nothing is apart from the ground, everything is within it as potential. So, of course, many appearances arise, the appearances are instant. In our dualistic way of looking at things, we see them composed and constructed, compounded, put together by causes and circumstances. And of course, we study this in the teachings. But when we look directly at our mind as it is, each moment is in an instant here. It is this uncompoundedness, not madeness, uncontrivedness, which is the basis of everything, and also for us, the basis of limitation. Because the limitation arises in the arising of the thought of duality, which instead of just being released, is held on to as if it were a truth. And so just as I have to use reading glasses to read, and to see the screen clearly, we end up looking through the glasses, through the lenses of duality. We get accustomed to seeing things out there with ourselves, as it were, on the inside as the looker. I look out at the world. This is a misconception. The world is not the way we think it is. Thinking is the medium through which the delusion or false idea of inherent existence is maintained. So the ground of non-duality is the simplicity of the whole, the completion, the Mahamudra or the Dzogpa Chimbo, which has never been divided, never set against itself. However, we are generally unaware of this. So the path of non-duality can be either direct, where you open to your mind as it is, which involves simply relaxing out of thought construction, which is the simplest path of Mahamudra, to do absolutely nothing, and then to see that everything arises effortlessly, including yourself. But often that is difficult because we are so committed to the idea that I am the doer, I am the agent, I am responsible for my life. If I don't sort myself out, I'm always going to be in a mess. So we pull ourselves back into ourselves, saying, the path begins with me, I have to improve myself. And this is the path of Lamrim, where we go through stage by stage. And the first stage that we can look at, it's impermanence, which we touched on already. The seasons are impermanent, everything is changing all the time. And this arises because although we believe that there are fixed things out there, as is explained in many, many texts, particularly this foundational text of Nagarjuna, all phenomena arise in dependent origination. That is to say, you could say, well, I'm talking with you today on the basis that I have been fortunate to study and practice Dharma for a long time. That opportunity arose for me growing up in Western Europe at a time when we had a reasonable education system, and I had the support of my family, which arose on the fact that we had peace at the time that I've been alive. And so on, many, many different factors, the economic situation, political situation, and so on. All of these factors operate together to bring about the ease of progress or the difficulty of progress for ourselves. As we can see now with what is happening in Ukraine, people whose lives a month ago, just over a month ago, were very straightforward, have now become much, much more complicated. And that's due to the fact that the force field of the tension between Ukraine and Russia, which had stabilized in a kind of trembling way since the invasion of Crimea and the Donbass, these vibrations started to increase, and now the structures are much less stable. When we look around, the economic forces are also like that. The supply of gas for heating houses and so on, imports, exports, who is friend, who is enemy. Our lives have periods of calm and peace where we feel a little complacent, a little bit relaxed in our predictions. Oh, tomorrow will be like yesterday. But in times of turbulence, we see, oh, that was a lucky time. That was a dream time. So in this turbulent time, we have the opportunity to see how everything links together. And when there are things which are close together, they can be inclusive or exclusive. So we have NATO, the countries which are signed up to this treaty, and they come together and do a lot for Ukraine on one level, but they don't put an arm around and say, welcome Ukraine, you can join us. So in these dynamics, you can see that as long as you have two, the pulsation of inclusion and exclusion will continue. And we can never be sure that what is included today will be included tomorrow. So dependent origination is saying the basis of your life, of your world, of everything you know is dynamic. It is not fixed. It's not resting on a solid ground, but it emerges from factors like a karmic intention, karmic habit, your own education, where you live, what economic opportunities open for you, and so on. Whether you have children, whether you don't have children, many, many factors will determine whether your original intention to practice Dharma really ripens for you or not. Usually we find we have done much less Dharma practice than we thought we would, because events occur, life difficulties arise, you have to take care of aged parents and so on. There are many samsaric factors which impinge on the intention you might have. It's by reflecting on this that we really realize, oh, my ego self is not an autonomous agent. I am not in charge of my life. This is one of the great fantasies which is promulgated by consumerist capitalism, that you make choices in a world, you are a free agent and you decide how you want to live. When we actually look at our lives, it's not like that. Rents increase in many cities. I hear in Berlin, they've been shooting up a lot. So dependent on what they call market forces, it becomes easy or difficult to live in a city. I'm not in charge. On the other hand, I can't just sit it out as an observer, because this force field that I'm connected with is organizing many of the factors of my life. So the basic formulation of dependent origination on the basis of this, that arises, is something very helpful for us to look at again and again, because this also is a form of non-duality. This and that are joined together. We are still joined to the patterns of our parents, of our culture, of our language, of whether the winter is cold or not, whether we studied hard at school or not, whether we have the skills you want for life. We are an interactive microsystem, niched or embedded inside these great systems of movement and change. I am a changing aspect of the field of change. So the more we reflect on that and examine it, we're thinning and softening this fixed sense that I exist, I am the center of my world, I want you to take me seriously. When we see how easily our moods change, how distracted we become, well, why do we want people to take us seriously? We are not fixed, we are not solid. The path of practice is to learn to move with movement and to be still with stillness. Stillness means the mind as it is in its empty aspect. Movement means the mind as it is in its compassion aspect. These two aspects are inseparable. So we can see that the clocks have just changed. So what was 7 in the morning now becomes like 8 o'clock in the morning. How can that be? Because clock time is conventional. It has no inherent truth, no inherent existence of its own. Many of the things that we see as being reliable and fixed are in fact concepts. And the concepts are repeated again and again in the mental formations of many beings. And this gives them a certain density and power. But we see, oh, they can change. Ice becomes water. Water becomes steam. The steam goes up into the atmosphere, forms as clouds, which then rain. These movements occur again and again. So what is the essence? Is water, flowing water, the real essence, and ice is an altered state, and steam is an altered state? Or is steam how it is? And if we were on another planet that was much hotter, then steam would be more prevalent. So when we examine ourselves, the focus of Dharma is always to say, don't sit inside an assumption. Try to see how this assumption, cultural, based on gender, based on age, and so on, how these assumptions have arisen and how they operate and how they influence how you behave. And then we see that the concept is resting on previous concepts, previous historical formations, and this influences how we engage in the world. I do not have ground to stand on. I am swimming in the current of events, what's called in Sanskrit santana, the flow of this moment and this moment and this moment and this moment. So learning to swim in that and not struggle with against the flow, but also not falling asleep in this flow is what the gift that the study of dependent origination can bring to us. And so through that, we see that the seeming existence of separate entities is a delusion. Nothing exists in and of itself. I have a body. I can say this is my body, but my body is sitting on a chair. If I get up from the chair, I have to stand or start to walk. I am always somewhere. Now, in our ordinary conceptualization, we tend to think I am a constant factor, and I can walk, and I can go and sit in the park. I can talk to people. I can do many things, and I'm always me, whatever I do. This is a conceptually mediated interpretation of life. When I go out of my flat, I have to go down some stairs onto the street. If it's icy, if it's wintertime, then I have to go down the stairs a little carefully because my body is getting old. So the slipperiness of the steps and how I walk arise together. I'm not the master of the stairs. I'm in a conversation or communication with the environment as it changes. Many people look forward to spring coming, but with the spring, you get the flowering of many bushes, and with that, you get pollen, and then people get hay fever. So there are all kinds of allergies that arise to aspects of the environment because we are in an intercourse all the time. So impermanence and interdependence is a wonderful way to see I arise with this. James is sitting on a chair. James is walking down the street. James is making some tea. In all of these situations, whatever I am doing is dependent on having enough money to pay the electric bill, in having a pan to heat the gas and the water and so on. There is no aspect of our life which is sealed off. We go to sleep in a bed. If we don't have a bed, then we sleep under a tree. We are always somewhere in interaction with that environment. So this is an enormously important sense of non-duality. The subject, I, me, myself, does not exist apart from the environment. So it's not subject and object, it's subject with object. So, in fact, it's really a compound, subject-object. It's not two things, but more like a kind of pulsation. And this feeds into, of course, the understanding that we have in the Prajnaparamita literature. Prajnaparamita means the paramita, the going across on the basis of wisdom. That on this side of the shore, in samsara, everything seems fixed and real and solid within inherent existence. When we see the emptiness of all that occurs, this takes us to the other shore, in which what is occurring is appearance and emptiness. So in the Heart Sutra, we have form and emptiness. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is not other than empty. So two are not two, but neither are they one. They are not two. So non-dual is simply advaita or advaya, not two. This is the middle way between two or one. So I have my body and emptiness, my ears and emptiness, my eyes and emptiness. Empty of what? Empty of inherent existence. If I take out my eyeball, it won't see anything. My eyeball operates because of it's embedded in this communicative system of my body. So although I say I see with my eyes, I see with my eyes on the basis that the nerves connected with the eyes are connected in with the other nervous system and into the brain function. I breathe with my lungs on the basis of the lungs in the body linked to the heart. I live in a building made out of bricks. Each brick is piled on top of a previous brick with some cement in between. Wherever we look, we see that the naming of something which gives us the sense of that exists, like I live in a flat in a big house. But the big house is made up of pieces. Each of these pieces is resting on other pieces. The house itself is a concept. I conceptualize house. It doesn't mean that there is nothing there at all. But when I approach the house, I approach it through my mental functioning. A bird doesn't think about the house the way I do. Neither does a mouse. Neither does a mosquito in the summertime or a wasp in the autumn. Each of these creatures is moving in relation to this structure and revealing aspects of the structure according to their mode of perception. We, as kind of whatever we call it, human supremacists, we feel we sit on top of the mountain and look down at all the other species and think that we have this divine right to be in charge in a human-made world. And therefore, how I see things is how they are. Tibetan Buddhism is very critical of this view. It's always saying, well, there are 6 realms in samsara, and each of the beings in these realms has their own particular karmically nuanced set of experiences embedded inside the general pattern of experience for these creatures. If you go out in the country and you see a field with horses in it, some of the horses are quite energetic and frisky, others are more placid, they're not moving around so much. The horses have their own karma, the sheep have their own karma, the cows have their own karma, people have their own karma. So in every situation, the creatures, those that are, as it were, created or appear to have been born, are experiencing experience. That is to say, I don't experience the flat that I live in. I experience my experience of the flat that I live in. Because what is the flat? If I say, I experience the flat as it is, and a little mouse runs across the floor and squeaks at me, said, oh, James, you're crazy. I live in this house too. It's not your house. The mouse has an experience that is not my experience, but it has an experience. So this is at the heart of the Heart Sutra. We don't experience things, we experience interpretations, imaginations, the revelation of what arises in our mind. You cannot step out of your mind. Now you might think, well, the wall is not just something imagined. James, if you go and bang your head on the wall, it's going to be very sore. That is dependent origination. Soft flesh on a hard surface, then some pain will arise. The pain that I feel is an experience. It doesn't prove that there is a wall existing outside my experience. It means I can experience the wall delicately or in a rough manner, but it will always be as experience. So, as it says, from every level of the Buddha's teaching, the mind is chief. We begin with the mind, everything ends with the mind, whether you're eating or walking or talking, if you're in the shower, going to the toilet, everything is experience. You go to the doctor with a pain, he says, oh, how does that feel? Is it sore here? Is it sore there? He's asking about your experience. And if the doctor cuts you open, what they will experience, you probably wouldn't. If you saw your insides, you might want to vomit. You might be scared of the blood, but the surgeon looks inside. Oh yeah, I know what that is. This kind of abscess is like this, or this kind of tumor is like that. These are interpretations. Everything we learned at school, we were being trained to interpret according to the parameters, the shaping of our cultural assumptions. So this is very important, because a big obstacle can arise for well, for all sentient beings, but particularly maybe for Western people, because our education has been so materialistic that there are real objects out there and science can give an objective account of them. And if you follow these guidelines, you will know exactly where you are. But the Buddhist teaching is putting that into question. It's saying the thoughts you have tell you about your capacity for thought formation. They don't arrive at the object. So when we say prajna paramita, it's not that the insight or the wisdom has taken you to the truth of the object. It's taken you to the truth of the mind, because all objects are experienced and are revealed as experience. This can be quite difficult to understand. It's not saying everything is just your imagination. It's only the mind, because the mind is interpreting the raw material. What it's saying is, you always cook your experience. You heat it, you add herbs and spices, you cook it according to age, gender, education, cultural interest, whether you have a disability, whether you have poor eyesight, or you're deaf, or you have to stay in a wheelchair. There are so many factors which come in to how you construe or bring together what is going on. So we looked before at the 5 skandhas, or the 5 heaps or ingredients. And the 4th one is compounding, bringing together the evidence which is acquired through our mind exploring through the senses and our conceptualization. It's mixing perception through the senses and conception through the mind, and these two being packaged into particular shapes is then what is considered by consciousness. We are conscious of our interpretation of the situation. People with different political views will understand changes in taxation or child welfare in very different ways. People who are interested in a pluralistic society will have a different approach to immigrants for people who are traditionalists and want to keep a kind of simplicity to the racial mix and cultural mix of a country. We know this. These are mind formations, ideas going to conflict with ideas. Now, for meditators, this is very, very important, because this is the basis for the functioning of Dharma practice, in particular Tantra. In Tantra, we visualize the deity, we see that the deity is appearance and emptiness, that they are a pure form. In the sadhana, in the ritual practice, you visualize the deity, then you invite the pure form of the deity to come from their Buddha realm to dissolve into your visualized form and become one. And then it's as if you're in the presence of this transformative purity, which by reciting the mantra and the prayers, you become closer and closer to it, until, having received the 4 lights of the 4 initiations, you become able to merge into the state of the deity and then dissolve from that into emptiness. This would be meaningless if the deity was one thing and you were another kind of thing, because you could never actually meet. The Tantra is based on the meeting and the interaction and the connectivity of empty formations moving in space. All the various mandalas are aspects of the Dharma Dhatu, of the infinite sphere within which dharmas or phenomena or imaginings arise. So we can imagine peaceful sitting deities, dancing deities, wrathful, angry deities, male deities, female deities, half female, half male deities. There are so many possibilities because Tantra is setting out to show that whatever structure you have from your habitual conceptual interpretation, there will be a deity who will get close to that and allow you to more easily dissolve. So, for example, say you found yourself as a young person getting quite interested in politics, maybe radical politics, and you read many things which are critique of the government, and you're very dissatisfied with the provision of public education and so on. And you have a kind of critical, angry kind of intelligence. This is it's not that you have to then become a peaceful person and become a sort of petty bourgeois liberal. You can keep your radical view, but it's probably helpful to visualize a deity that is also at home in anger. So maybe Hiruka, Vajrakilaya, and so on. Because there you see the energy which in your ego formation is limiting and restrictive and brings you into conflict with the world. Your anger increases your sense of duality. Why do these people behave so badly? I don't understand. Separating self and other, when you bring that energy into meditating on the wrathful deity, that very energy which limits you as an ego becomes the basis of liberation. So whether you're oriented towards desire or jealousy or pride, whether you are unhelpfully humble, whether you're anxious and hesitant, whichever formation you have, you can use that energy to integrate with the form of the deity and see its emptiness. As long as you reify or solidify the limiting aspects of your personality, say you have a lot of pride, and then you think, oh, pride is not good, I need to get rid of my pride. What you're doing is you're starting from a very dualistic position. I have a problem. The problem is a bad thing. I need to get rid of it before I can make progress on the path. That's the reading of the ego. The reading of Tantra says, take the pride, but transform it into the pride of the deity, Klaingagyal, the dignity of maintaining the visualization, I am Tara, and everything is my mandala. So, non-duality allows the inclusion of the aspects of our existence which would, in ordinary terms, be made bad and something to be removed. So, in the Theravadan path and in the general Mahayana, we're trying to free ourselves from the negative and accentuate the positive, the compassion, the connectivity with beings. In Tantra, we are transforming our erroneous, our wrong, our deluded idea that our negative qualities are definitive of who we are, and that they are real, and they are a real obstacle and a problem. And if I don't get rid of it, I'll never make any progress. So if we go back to the Heart Sutra, the 5 poisons are empty. Mental dullness, which is a kind of mental laziness or a kind of attitude of assuming things rather than examining them, and so going under the power of concepts, that is a movement of emptiness in the mind. Desire, aversion, jealousy, pride, all of these, when you look at them, are dynamic patterns. You get pulled into them. They become a kind of coloration of you when you get really jealous and you get really pissed off and why are you doing this? And you want to destroy our relationship. So much pain and anger arises. Oh, this is movement of energy. Because we don't recognize what it actually is, we layer it inside our concept. You are a horrible person. You are destroying our relationship. You are real. You do bad things. And I'm the victim. I'm the victim. Boom. Then subject and object become very, very real. What has actually happened? Someone you want to kiss is kiss someone else. Kissing is an activity. It's a movement. It's a dependent origination. If we stay with movement, impermanence, connectivity, we realize it is unstable, unstable. It is the ego which wants the impermanent to be permanent. The ego makes a demand on phenomena that phenomena will not fulfill. Phenomena are unreliable. That's why we take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Guru, Deva, Dakini, 3 Kayas, and so on. We don't take refuge in your beloved. You don't take refuge in your children. You don't take refuge in your politicians. These are appearances operating inside the field of appearing, and we have to keep our awareness bright and not go into believing that our children really exist. They are present. They are dynamic manifestation, changing with circumstances, but they don't exist as someone. As children grow up, they tell us and show us in different ways, I am not who you think I am. I am not who I thought I was. I don't know who I will be. This is the actual situation. When you look at Tara, Tara has 21 forms. Actually, she has many, many forms. Or you say, I want to pray to Avalokiteshvara, Chenrezig, because he looks so sweet and kind and he'll never hurt me. Then we see, oh, we also have we have form with 2 arms or 4 arms or 1,000 arms. We have forms of Chenrezig which are rather angry looking. Which is the real Chenrezig? There is no real Chenrezig. 8 forms of Padmasambhava. Which is the real form? There is no real form. There is nothing real. These are appearances. Appearance and emptiness, energy and emptiness, walking in emptiness, talking in emptiness. Everything. Emptiness here simply means movement within the field of movement. The dance never stops, always changing, always changing. In that way, we see people are nice to us and we smile. Someone insults us and we shrink back a little bit, or we get angry. If you are doing your practice and you realize the ground of my manifestation is open and empty, then if you get angry, you allow the anger and it dissolves. If somebody is sweet to you, you feel an enjoyment and it dissolves. This is how we apply the central meditation instruction, which is Don't push away the bad things and don't try to hang on to the good things. Allow life, phenomena, experience to arise and pass, arise and pass. And if we do this, we find that we are less and less under the power of concepts, and we are more present and open, and that without planning to, without thinking about it, we respond to the situation. Why? How do we do this? We do it because we are co-emergent with each situation. But what will I say? What will I say? Well, if you just stay present and look at the other person, and they say something, you will speak. But will I say the right thing? No one will know. Who knows what's the right thing to say? You find yourself speaking. Connectivity allows the co-emergence of subject and object to move like illusory phenomena. So this is how the non-duality that we practice in Tantra, how it operates. Firstly, with devotion, we say, I want to be like you. Means I don't want to be stuck in my own world. I want to be like you. I'm opening to you. So I'm dissolving my sense of being separation because of desire, of devotion. Let me merge with you. Then we merge through the practice I described earlier. We merge into the deity and dissolve into emptiness. Then out of emptiness, things arise. We hear a dog barking, the children come into the room, you find yourself getting up, doing something. Movement in emptiness. This is why the most important thing is to find the emptiness of the mind. Everything that moves, moves in the mind, because everything is experience. When we have this, then we see how we can transform situations rather than be trapped in them. So there is the non-duality of myself and the deity. Then there is the non-duality of the deity and the pure ground. So the deity manifests from the Dharmakaya through the Sambhogakaya as this manifesting Nirmanakaya form. And I am now not different from that. And I am introduced to my non-duality with the open, empty ground. That's why we have to do these practices again and again, 100,000 times, 1 million times, and so on, many, many times, because we are so addicted to the separate solidity of I, me, myself. And for most of us, it takes a long time to soften ourselves. Sialama, my main teacher, he very often gave the example that if you have a ball of butter, traditional Dzo butter in Tibet, and you put it in a leather bag and you leave it, the leather will dry out and the bag will start to crack. But if you take even a little butter and you massage it again and again into the leather will become soft. And he said, this is the thing, studying Dharma, unless you really integrate it into your life, is just like being a bag containing a lump of butter. Better to take just a little Dharma and massage it into your life every day, observing how you sit in judgment about other people and what they're wearing and how they talk, and get angry with people in the news and think, oh, subject and object, we separated. I'm sitting in my little castle, looking down on the people around, feeling superior. Dissolve the walls of the castle, dissolve the drawbridge, become part of the world, enter the horizontal frame of ceaseless interaction. If we don't do that, you can know a lot of Dharma, but it won't really do you much good. So this is how we would be applying the understanding of the Prajaparamita. So as we probably know, the various forms of Dharma practice can be organized as the 9 yanas, from the general Theravadan position up to Dzogchen or Mahamudra. And they're often split into these two classes, the vehicles of the cause and the vehicles of the result. In the vehicles of the cause, you're trying to generate the good qualities necessary for gaining enlightenment. So you see enlightenment as something far ahead. This is a dualistic view. It's really only with the practice of Tantra that you come into the direct lived experience of being already at the result. It's called the Drebuitekpa, the vehicle of the result, in which you act as if you were already enlightened. So I become Tara, I become Padmasambhava. Everything I hear is mantra, everything I touch is the body of Padmasambhava, and every thought that arises in the mind is the pure movement of the open and empty Dharmakaya. So we have to practice this again and again. Otherwise, we come back to a basis of separation. I exist as me and I'm not like you. Whereas if you stay with this result orientation, every person you meet is a movement of the energy of the mandala. You are a movement of the energy of the mandala. The mandala is the Dharma Dhatu, the open space in which possibilities are arising. And so as you respond to other people, instead of conceptualizing it as, oh God, why do I have to talk to this person again? Or do I really have to sit in a business meeting and listen to this nonsense every week after week after week? Instead of falling into that solidifying conceptualization, you're hearing sound is mantra. It's just talking, empty talking, empty talking. You can still follow the conversation, but what you're doing is avoiding investing it with the energy of the 5 poisons. So in the system of the 2 truths, in relative truth, impure relative truth is when you have the perception of entities, of real separate people or things, and they are invested with an affective tone, with a quality of the 5 poisons. I like this person. I want to be with this person. I don't like this person. Take them away. So the reason I don't want to be with this person is because they are horrible. They are horrible. Everybody knows they are horrible. So I have projected my interpretation into that person, and now I have a definition of who they are. This is the impure relative truth, because you don't see that the horribleness of the other person is your interpretation. It's your interpretation. It's not uncommon in Britain anyway, when there is a murder trial and the murderer is given a very long prison sentence, for the mother to shout out in the court, but he is a good boy, he is a good boy. For the mother, he is a good boy. She sees her boy. She doesn't see, oh, this is a murderer. This is interpretation. No one can know the truth of anyone else's life. We are ungraspable. So when we start to see the ungraspability of phenomena, what are we going to hang these 5 poisons on? Who are we going to be jealous of? Who are we going to be in love with? We see these as empty phenomena. Of course, the feeling tones can arise, but they are a quality of the moment. They are a mood of movement rather than a definite truth about the other person. So by dissolving that, you come to pure relative truth. You still have the perception of existence, of people and things as somehow in themselves, but now you're able to see them more clearly because you're not filled up with your own emotional reaction. And that allows you gradually to see how your own mental activity is solidifying the world. I believe in the truth of phenomena. So in that level, we're looking at the illusory nature of phenomena. That, as we touched on last time, you see a mirage in the summertime. You see this water glimmering on the road, but there is no water. You see someone, oh, this woman is my mother. But she is a friend to her friend. The friend doesn't call her mother, I call her mother. I think this is my mother, my mother. But that is not an essential definition of who this woman is. It is a relational definition. This woman is or has been the partner of my father. Oh, they have a different relationship to each other than me. But when you're a child, you just say, Mom, Mom, because you know this woman is my mother. That's all that matters. When you start to see how your interpretations limit the world by investing one interpretation onto the object, you start to loosen your fixation on knowledge. I know who this is. You shift from knowing about something to that is to say, you release your tendency to land on the other person with your claws out, so you grasp them, you are this person, and then you allow yourself to be with them, and they emerge. And as we know, in any relationship, whether it's with parents or children or lovers or friends, there's pulsation. Sometimes we feel close, sometimes we don't feel so close. A big problem in many relationships nowadays is that people keep inquiring, what's the matter? What, you don't seem very happy to be with me. This is not very wise to say usually. They give them the space to pulse. They're a bit cut off, but why? What's gone wrong? Maybe nothing's gone wrong. You're going to make something wrong if you keep asking what's gone wrong. The interface between shifting patterns, how could it be stable? And you want the other person to be happy all the time? Are they not entitled to be sad? Are they not entitled to be frustrated? Are they not entitled to be angry? Oh, but I don't like them to be angry. That's for you. What about them? Maybe they need to be angry. Maybe they just are angry. So then you start to see, oh, the rigidity of my self-construct, of my identity, is blocking me feeling this interactive movement. My isolation, indefinite understanding of the situation blocks the truth of non-duality. I am trying to enforce an artificial duality onto the other person because I want them to be knowable so that they will be reliable, so that I will feel safe. Oh, a lot of activity. For what purpose? Because it's a lie. They are not reliable. If you want something reliable, you have to find your own mind. You have to find the root of your mind as empty phenomena. So when you see that actually everything is empty, empty appearance with potential which can shift and turn in all directions, The pure emptiness is the absolute truth, and the fact of appearance is the inseparability of absolute truth and relative truth. Absolute truth is wisdom of emptiness. Relative truth is the compassion of connectivity. When these two come together, then you are able to respond in many ways to different situations. So, we tend to conceptualize our ego self as our starting point, which is why in the tradition, we should always try to do a little bit of practice when we awaken first thing in the morning. If you have a busy life and many demands come, you can at least give yourself 5 minutes, 3 minutes when you awaken, relax in the out breath, open and in space. And then things arise, maybe you have to run to get to work on time or take the kids to school, whatever it is, allow the movement to arise inside the spaciousness, which includes you and the environment. Self and other, self and world are interactive patternings of the energy of the ground. If you leap straight into activity and conceptualization, the condensation of that, the gathering together in its density, is likely to position you as separate from the environment. You look at your watch, oh, I'm late, I got to run. And then you're acting against the world, trying to get things to go the right way for you. You're not harmonic, you're not working with the energy of the world, but you're working against the world. And that is very, very exhausting. So always, everything arises from the open, empty ground. I arise, I am emptiness. All phenomena have the nature of emptiness, and I also have that. We say these mantras again and again. Entering the world in that way makes it much easier to see the non-duality. The separate self is a concept. When you give yourself a little time to observe your mind and you see the flow of thoughts and feelings and sensations, they tend to be centered around I, me, myself. So each of these arising moments, we might say, is hollow. If you are practicing Dharma, then you take the thread of emptiness and you put it through each moment. So each moment of life becomes a kind of rosary, a kind of mala on which you are reciting all phenomena are empty, all phenomena are empty. But if you put the thread of self, of I like, I don't like, or I've been here before, or this is boring, if you put that thread of self-reference through each moment, it becomes like a great chain around your neck and it weighs you down. Many, many people are burdened by this. So, what are we stringing the world on? On emptiness. Emptiness is simply an appearance arises as pure appearance. It is not the appearance of something, it is the appearance of appearance. The somethingness is what the dualistic, dualizing mind invested into the appearance to make it solid, separate. And this is mental activity. It doesn't actually create any separate phenomena. What it does do is alter the patterning of empty appearance. So if we can see this, then we're standing at the crossroads of samsara and nirvana. Samsara is the belief in the inherent existence of self and other, the fact that I am not you and you are not me and we will never be the same. And this gap, this separation, leads to the functions of karma and therefore wandering in the six realms. But if we directly see self and other arise together, not as two things, but as two linked modes of co-emergence, then we see how it's rolling along. This is the non-duality of subject and object, of self and other, is grounded in the non-duality of subject and emptiness and object and emptiness. I am the same as you in our emptiness. I am different from you in my appearance. So appearance is diversity, emptiness is sameness. And it is the paradoxical play of these two aspects which allows us to be connected with everything in the open, empty ground, and at the same time, very precise and defined and attuned and connected in how we manifest. Because manifestation is simply energy. I'm talking at a screen in front of me as if I was talking with you, but I don't really see you. So my body is moving, my mind is moving, my lips are moving, the breath is going in and out. I am movement. You can say, oh, this is James. What is James doing? James is talking, but that is a solidified situation due to the fact that we are interested in Dharma, that we want to understand Dharma, due to the fact that we have Zoom, due to the fact of Kamalashila being able to organize these events, due to these factors arising together, I am doing what I'm doing. It's not what I do all the time. It's what I'm doing just now, according to the situation. We all have these potentials. Our potential is called forth in different ways with different people at different times. So when you look inside to find your essential self, you find emptiness. But this emptiness is not a dull void. It's not oblivion. It's not a nihilistic annihilation. It is a potential, because look at how many different ways you manifest. How you are with older people, with older family members, if they're still alive, with children, with colleagues at work, if you play football at the weekend, however you are, look how you are moving and turning and pulsing with these other events. You have never been alone in your manifestation. You are always alone in your infinite emptiness. The mind is infinitely empty and always connected. So the more we have an understanding of this, we start to see how the fruition comes together in the form of the inseparability of these three aspects of the basic essence that we have, which is emptiness. Our mind is basically not a thing. You cannot find it. Your mind has contents, it has thoughts, feelings, and so on, but they don't last very long. When you look for the mind, not for the content of the mind, you find openness. This openness shows itself as a field of experience. Everything which is including you arising at this moment. So this is the Hlundrup, or the instantly arising, or the effortless manifestation of which you are part. And then within this, you move in connectivity. In Tibetan, they call it all-pervading compassion or all-pervading kindness. That is to say, when you really see, I am not a part, then everything is yourself, or everything is what is arising for you. But this you is not something held inside you. You is then not a self, but a presence. You are aware, relaxed, and inside this field of awareness, self and other are moving. And there is no end to this connectivity. We can relate to all kinds of people in different ways. Sometimes you find yourself being very available, sometimes unavailable, sometimes grumpy, sometimes generous. These are the many flavors of connectivity. It's not rule-based. There is not a menu of how to be a Buddha. And this is very, very important, because the ego wants certainty. The ego wants to know, how should I behave? What should I do? Tell me, and I will do my best. I promise I'll do my best. Now, you can apply this to doing the nundro, doing your prostrations and bodhicitta and offering mandalas and so on, because it's an activity. I am doing this. But when you come to the mind itself, you are not the doer. This is an unspeakable, unimaginable non-duality of co-emergence. So in Mahamudra, they call this sahaj, means the effortless, instantly, just this, the co-emergence, which is free of the need to think and find the right way to do it. It's about trusting that this is how it is. This is how it is. The key thing there, which I think you can see, is, but that doesn't feel like me. I get anxious. I want to do it right. I want to please other people. When that kind of thought arises, or when you get that insight into yourself, this is very precious. You can see, I don't trust the ground. I am taking refuge in my anxious self-formation. So then if we go back to Garab Dorji, in the 3 statements, the first thing he says is, you need to be introduced to your mind as it is. You have to see your mind is empty from the very beginning. There is no private individual self in there, not available. That is delusion. So, as Namkhai Norbu said, do not enter into judgment. Judgment splits subject and object. Judgment gives you the sense that you are somehow outside of the non-dual whole, and you're kind of looking in and making opinions about this and that. Always relax into the ground openness and get used again and again to moving with circumstances. Not the master, not the slave. You are on the middle way, moving with circumstances. And in that way, you loosen up the 5 elements in your body. You allow yourself to see more how other people are, and you work with these circumstances, not imposing your plan, not subjecting yourself to other people's plans, but seeing what is possible. So relax or be busy according to circumstances, not as a personality quality, not, oh, I've always been very active. That doesn't take you very far. The issue is, what does this situation require? Because if I'm going to be co-emergent with this situation, I have to allow subject and object to arise together, not imposing my will on the situation and not allowing the situation to overdetermine me. So it means being very, very precisely on the point of emergence. Just as if some people were improvising dance together or improvising jazz, they have to be absolutely attentive to the energy of the field so they can move forward or back according to circumstances. So this is the fulfillment of non-duality, is where your mind is manifest as the Dharmakaya, your speech is the Sambhogakaya, and your body is the Nirmanakaya. These three aspects are all empty of any graspable substance, and yet ceaselessly offering the potential of connectivity within non-duality. So this is just about the end of our time today. It's been, we cover a lot of ground, but I hope it's interesting, and you see that non-duality is intrinsic. It is how it is. It's always connected. Disconnection, separation, this is artificial. This is developed by conceptualization, and we can see it's what gives rise to conflicts in the world, in families, between nations, in wars, and so on. It's always led by ideas. Ideas are not bad in themselves, because when you look at an idea, you see, oh, it's there and gone. Ideas are empty, but they are very cheaty, very deceptive, because the idea can say, I am permanent, I will live forever, I will never die. That's not true. So theater, pretense, and the ego are very, very similar together. We are pretending to be ourselves when we are actually Buddhas. Maybe it's time to close the theater. And maybe time for me to go. It's been nice to spend a little bit of time with you. I hope this is useful, and I hope that Kamalashila continues to have a successful life, and that when the virus recedes in its power to condition us all, we'll all find a little bit more freedom. So I wish you good luck and good fortune, and perhaps we meet again.